Welcome back to DFS Rebels for another week of Sunday games. It is your boy Dante, back at it again with our top picks of week 5 to help you fill up those lineups so you can fill up those pockets. So with that being said, it is time to join the rebellion. All right, so welcome back. I will be flying solo tonight as my colleague and partner in crime, Mr. Rob, will not be with us as he's experiencing some technical difficulties. Hopefully, we will get those issues resolved for next week. But for tonight, I will be solo. Don't worry though, Mr. Rob, he's here with us in spirit still. I have his notes, I have his picks that he came up with. We both have a lot of bangers this week, I like to think. And we're both coming off of very strong weeks last week, so we're looking to build off of the momentum this week. So, enough of that. Let's get started. So, we do like Khalil Shakir of the Bills this week, since Isaiah McKenzie is out. Pittsburgh against the Steelers. Pittsburgh tends to run a very heavy man defense and a lot of cover two. And usually when Josh Allen sees this kind of defense, he abuses the slot a lot. Shakir will be lining up in the slot mostly, especially since Isaiah McKenzie's already been ruled out. Yes, Stefon Diggs will still get a share. It's Stefon Diggs. He's one of the top receivers in the NFL. But still, Khalil Shakir should be a very underrated, low-owned, good priced pick this week. Another player that we like is Derrick Henry. He's been quietly heating up week by week, and yet we're over here on week 5. And ownership still really hasn't gotten his way. Derrick Henry last week against the Colts has seen a 23% target share in the passing attack, and you might think that will go up this week since Treylon Burks will be out. He's already been ruled out. So Derrick Henry should have a very good week this week, despite not having the greatest matchup in the world. But as we've seen in the past, when Derrick Henry starts getting hot, he gets scorching hot and pretty much unstoppable. We also like James Robinson this week. A lot of people are stacking Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk together, but they're leaving out James Robinson. James Robinson will be a very good solo play this week. He has a very favorable matchup versus the Texans' run defense that ranks 29th against the run. And he is leveraged off of a 20% owned stack of Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk. So like I said, not a lot of people are adding him into their lineups, or at least not stacking him with Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk. So therefore, I believe, especially if you want to stack him up, you still can. But I believe James Robinson should even be a very good solo play this week, and he is going to be cheaper than a lot of the top other big name running backs. We're also all over Chris Olave this week. He leads the NFL currently through the first 4 weeks with 13 deep targets, and he has the most big play targets on the year, and he's been producing regardless of quarterback. He's averaging 14.7 points per game with Jameis, and then he had 16.7 points last week in London with Andy Dalton. And obviously, he's going to be cheap wide receiver, a good sneaky play. Chris Olave, he is a stud. I'd add him to the lineups this week as well. And 2 running backs that we really like is Ramondre Stevenson and Damien Pierce of the Patriots. So they got a very favorable matchup versus the Lions. The Lions rank bottom 5 in tackling, and Stevenson himself, he ranks first in broken tackles. So both Stevenson and Harris have averaged about 16 touches per game. But despite the timeshare, they both get that modern day running back 1 volume, and then they both have ridiculously low price tags. So you could really go with either one. I'd probably lean towards Ramondre Stevenson this week, but both will be great picks for lineups, especially if you're trying to save a little bit of salary in that running back position. I would for sure go with either one of the Patriots running backs, either Stevenson or Harris. And a very sneaky tight end for this week would be O.J. Howard of the Texans. He's currently ranked 11th in the NFL for tight end air yards. And the Jaguars his matchup is against Jaguars, who mainly run a cover 3 zone mixed with a lot of blitz. So Davis Mills will more than likely be encouraged to throw the ball OJ Howard's way to counter that matchup. And OJ Howard logged about 75% of the snaps last week, and he's really been targeted heavily in the red zone as well. So OJ Howard is going to be a very sneaky good play this week for your line, especially if you're trying to save money in the tight end spot. So that's what we're doing here at DFS Rebels. We're trying to get those sneaky plays like the Chris Olaves, like the Ramondre Stevensons, Damien Harris's, the OJ Howards, guys that can help you save a lot of money in lineups that really have good potential to have great games this week. And of course, we cannot go without talking about the Eagles and Cardinals matchup. Jalen Hurts, he's costing 8,100, so he's one of the more expensive quarterbacks this week. But he has been a sneaky MVP candidate through the first 4 weeks of the season thus far. And both Mr. Robin and I are stacking him with A.J. Brown. That duo right there against the worst secondary in the league, which is the Cardinals secondary, will be a very good stack. And I'd say you could even stack him with Devontae Smith and even Dallas Goedert, who's been one of the better tight ends this year. He's back, he's healthy. So I honestly think a stack of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, or Dallas Goedert, either one would really be good. I'd lead more towards the A.J. Brown stack, but since that might be a little higher owned, Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert are also other viable options. And also, another player you can't forget about is Miles Sanders. He's got a great matchup against the Cardinals defense as well. So you can also stack him up with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts if you'd like, or if you'd just like to do a Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders stack, you could do that as well. And the best part about Miles Sanders is that he's very low owned this week. He's only 5% owned. I would still go with the Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk stack, even though it is a little higher owned. It's higher owned for a good reason, and that's because they're very likely to go off this week, or at least have great games this week. And they're both going to be cheaper than most of the other guys at the respective positions. Most of the top guys, such as the Jalen Hurts or the Josh Allens or whoever else is playing on the Sunday slate games that are going to be expensive. So I'd still go with the Lawrence and Christian Kirk stack. Yes, I know it is higher owned. So if you're running multiple lineups this week, at least have one of those lineups with that stack. Another guy I've been really talking about a lot in that game is on the Texans side of the ball as well. Like I mentioned OJ Howard before, but I also really like their running back, Damien Pierce. So I know I've been talking about him pretty much every week since the season started, but he's really seeing more and more of an increase in carries per game. And he's got up in salary. He's got up to 6,200, but he's still cheaper than the McCaffreys, than the top guys like that. So this is another week I'm going to play Damien Pierce, and the Jaguars' run defense is only ranked 26th against the run, so I'm expecting Damien Pierce to have another great game, or at least another great game in terms of his value. A wide receiver that I'm looking at separately is Curtis Samuel. I really like him because Jahan Dotson has been ruled out already, and Terry McLaurin will more than likely see the majority of the attention because he's Terry McLaurin. He's one of the top receivers in the league, in my opinion. But since he could attract all that attention, Terry McLaurin has been a little disappointing thus far throughout the first 4 weeks of the season, and I still really wouldn't go for him in week 5. So that's why it's going to open the door for guys like Curtis Samuel, who should see an increased role. Jahan Dotson now, and he's only costing 5,800, so it's a great place to save some salary. Speaking of saving salary in the wide receiver position, I really do like Elijah Moore because Zach Wilson is back and fully healthy, and his favorite receiver is dating back to last year and even against Steelers last week in week 4 to throw to was Elijah Moore. And Elijah Moore is only costing $5,000 instead of DraftKings salary. So Elijah Moore is another sneaky play I'd add into your lineups against the Dolphins. Dolphins defense has been great. As we all know, they've been getting up a lot of points to opposing offenses, especially the Ravens game going a couple of weeks ago. They gave up good bit to the Bengals last week on Thursday night, a week 4. So I'm expecting Zach Wilson to have a solid game against them, get Elijah Moore heavily involved, and I think Elijah Moore will be a great play this week. My favorite tight end this week, because Rob liked O.J. Howard, which is obviously it's a great matchup. I agree with them, or a great play. My favorite tight end, again, he's obviously a little more obvious, a little bit of a bigger name, T.J. Hawkinson. And he also went up in salary this week to $4,900. But that makes sense why. He had a crazy game. He had like 8 receptions and just short of 180 yards, I believe, and 2 touchdowns against the Seahawks. That's like crazy for a tight end. You don't see that every day for a tight end. That's like a great receiver game right there. And then you're seeing TJ Hawkins, a tight end, have that kind of game. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is back, but I still don't believe that'll take away much targets from TJ Hawkinson. So I'm having TJ Hawkinson in my lineup again for the second straight week. He's got a favorable matchup versus the Patriots defense that's only ranked 26 versus tight ends. So add TJ Hawkinson into your lineups. And I also like Jamal Williams, actually. I also add him in your lineups to running back of the Lions since he's playing the Patriots and there's no DeAndre Swift. So since he's out, I'd add Jamal Williams in there as well. And finally, my defense of the week, my favorite defense of the week is the 49ers defense. They are one of the more expensive defenses this week, but rightfully so. This is probably the best defense I've seen in quite a while. I've heard they've been saying it was the best defense in the 2000s or in like past 20 years or so. I wouldn't go that far just yet. The season is still young, but they've been phenomenal this week or this year so far. And they're coming off of holding the defending Super Bowl champs, the Rams, with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and them boys to only 9 points last week. That Niners defense is legit. And this week, they got a very favorable matchup versus the Panthers offense with Baker Mayfield under center. And they've obviously been shaky, haven't looked great. So defense-wise, I'm definitely adding the 49ers defense in my lineup this week. So that will conclude it for the picks that Mr. Rob and myself had this week. Once again, I do apologize about Mr. Rob. He's had his technical difficulties, but he should be back next week. So if you really do enjoy our content, if you enjoy what you see here or listen here, definitely consider subscribing to us. We add new podcasts we post on the week, every week on Saturday. And also consider donating to our Patreon too. It's only the price of a cup of coffee per month. And then that gives you access to our Discord where Mr. Rob and myself are available to answer your questions 24/7. And you'll get access to our spreadsheets, our cheat sheets that Mr. Rob and myself work hard on throughout the week, every week. So definitely consider Patreon, or at the very least give us a subscribe. So thank you guys for tuning in, and it's time to join the rebellion.